Welcome back to our fifth signatures class. Hope all of you fine. Tough times don't last, tough people do. You will never change your life until you change something you daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. When I was growing up by Nelly Wong. This is the last chapter in the first module, Autobiographical Writings and Memoirs. When I Was Growing Up is an autobiographical poem written by famous revolutionary feminist poet Nellie Wong. All of you need a white, attractive skin, so you definitely try at least one from the following: turmeric, saffron, red sandal, milk creams, rose powder, fruits, different kinds of oils, various skin whitening creams or treatments. Is it right? Our society believes white skin is the most attractive skin. You know, some research found that people perceive a large brown skin tone to be more physically attractive than a pale or dark skin tone. For the people of Kerala, the concept of beauty is changing. Racism is nonsense and it's terrible and disgusting. Nellie Wong was born on September 12, 1934 in Oakland, California. She is a renowned revolutionary feminist poet and activist who has strived to address socialist causes. Her parents were Chinese immigrants. At a very early age, she started working in a restaurant begun by her parents. After having graduated from Oakland High School, she worked as a secretary for Bethlehem Steel Corporation for several years. Later, she studied creative writing at San Francisco State University. During the Second World War, when Japan bombed America's naval base Pearl Harbor, Nellie was a child. This had a fearful and painful impact on her life because people would classify her family as Japanese when they were actually Chinese American. Nellie Wong was a Chinese American. Wong's collection of poetry include Dreams in Hudson Railroad Park, The Death of Longstream Lady, Stolen Moments, and Breakfast, Lunch, Dinner. Some of the recurring themes in her poetry are issues of feminism, immigration, and identity. She was greatly obsessed with the roots of Asian American culture and wrote at length about the Asian immigration to America. In 1989, she received the Women of Words Award from the San Francisco Women's Foundation. According to her, women should continue fighting for the liberation of women, since it is as necessary as breathing. She was very concerned about the plight of immigrant women. She believed that women are not condemned to live as victims on this earth. She was an advocate of revolutionary feminism. She thinks women as the most oppressed in the world. Socialist feminism, she thought, was the key to a better world. Many of her poems came from her working life. She says, a lot of my poems come from the workplace. That is where I have experienced a great deal of sexism and racism. Nellie's poems like Where is My Country raise issues regarding her Chinese American identity. Some think she is a Korean, others as a Mexican or a Filipino. Nellie's poems have been published in many countries. She served as a visiting professor in women's studies at the University of Minnesota. She is one of the founding members of the writing collective Unbound Feet. This was a performance group of Chinese American women who read together and lectured at universities throughout California in the late 1970s. Nellie Wong is one of the founding members of the writing collective Unbound Feet. Some of her poems, like Songs of Farewell, have been installed in public places as plaques in San Francisco. She has delivered a series of popular and powerful lectures titled Women and Revolution Alive and Inseparable. At the Radical Women's 41st anniversary, Nellie Wong declared that women liberation is necessary because when women rise, everyone will rise. Her article titled Asian American Women and Politics was recently included in an Asian American anthology. Nellie Wong's poems have been published in England, Italy, France, to name a few. She served as a delegate for the first US Women Writers Tour to China. She was the keynote speaker at various national and regional conferences such as Third World Women and Feminist Perspectives, Women Against Racism, and the National Women's Studies Association. The poem opens with the thoughts of a young girl who wishes to disown her identity and culture and tries to fit into the dominant white majority. She talks about the discrimination that she faced because of her appearance and color and expresses her desire to be like the fair, blonde, sensuous, desirable American woman. Wong reflects on the universal representations of Western ideals of beauty advertised in American popular culture. Wong identifies the invisibilization of racial issues in the second wave feminist movement. When I Was Growing Up is frequently anthologized poem. The poem shows the past of the poet, her early childhood and adolescence. The narrator, an Asian American, is forced to incorporate the dominant white culture and disown that of her own, owing to the fear of being discriminated. The white culture allows and ensnares her with all its privileges. The poem analyzes the struggle of a young lady to fit into the cultural majority. She is full of self-loathing words, self-loathing, hating oneself. She is full of self-loathing words towards her yellow skin and yearns for the white skin and perceives herself dirty. Beauty is coded as white. She comments, as a child, I used to desperately wish for paler skin, lighter hair, and rounder eyes. I would have gladly undergone any kind of reinvention available to be able to pass for white and stop hearing the ethnic slurs on the playground. In the concluding stanza, there is a transition and a self realization affected as she discovers her ethnic identity. She reconciles with her Chinese American identity, thereby breaking the stereotypes of the Western beauty cult. The poem is written in the past tense. The notable aspects of the structure of the poem are intended stanzas and very little usage of capitalization. The noticeable features are the intended stanzas and the little usage of capitalization. The other techniques employed in the poem are that of rhetorical questions, imagery, and repetition. Rhetorical questions means a question asked in order to create a dramatic effect or to make a point rather than to get an answer. We also find rhetorical questions, imagery, and repetition. Let we move to the poem. I know now that once I longed to be white. How, you ask? Let me tell you the ways. When I was growing up, people told me I was dark and I believed my own darkness. In the mirror, in my soul, my own narrow vision. Now I know that once I wanted to be white. You may ask me why. When I was growing up, people told me I was dark. I saw in the mirror and realized I was dark in my body and soul and in my own narrow vision. Indians considered Chinese in white in color, but Westerners never considered them as white. The poet wanted to be white in her childhood. She examined in the mirror and she sure about her color is dark. When I was growing up, my sisters with fair skin got praise for their beauty, and I fell further, crushed between high walls. When I was growing up, my sisters who had fair skin got praise for their beauty. I felt all the more worse as if crushed between high walls. Even at home, the poet herself is the victim of discrimination. The poet's sisters had fair skin and so they got praise for their beauty. This made the poet feel crushed between high walls. What was the discrimination practiced among the siblings that made the poet feel crushed between high walls? The poet's sisters had fair skin and so they got praise for their beauty. This made the poet feel crushed between high walls. When I was growing up, I read magazines and saw movies, blonde movie stars, white skin, sensuous lips, and to be elevated to become a woman, a desirable woman. I began to wear imaginary pale skin. When I was growing up, I read magazines and saw movies. I saw blonde movie stars. Blonde means woman with golden hair. I saw blonde movie stars with white skin and sensuous lips. Sensuous, a beautiful with a lot of sex appeal. To be like them, to be elevated, to be raised. Elevated means raised. To be elevated to their position, to become a woman desirable like them. I began to wear imaginary pale skin. What is the image of the desirable woman that is seen in the poem? The image of the desirable woman that is seen in the poem is to be like a blonde movie star with white skin and sensuous lips. What, according to the poet, was the concept of beauty that emerged through her habit of reading? According to the poet, the concept of beauty that emerged through her habit of reading was she should be a blonde with curly hair, with white or pale skin, and should have sensuous lips. The white culture has its own concept of beauty. This concept is popularized in the magazines, movies, newspaper, and other electronic media. In their concept, the first ingredient of beauty is whiteness. Black people, brown people, and yellow people are not beautiful to them. The white skin should be accompanied by curly blonde hair. Lanky black hair does not come in their idea of beauty. Then they want the lips to be ruddy and sensuous. Pale lips, thin lips, black lips, etc. do not have a place in their beauty books. They also want robust bodies and rounded eyes. They do not want to thin people but strong ones. They should also wear imported clothing and look elegant. When I was growing up, I was proud of my English, my grammar, my spelling, fitting into the group of smart children, smart Chinese children, fitting in, belonging, getting in line. When I was growing up, I was proud of my English, my grammar, and my spelling. I was fitting in the group of smart Chinese children. Thus, I felt belonging in line. She was proud of her English, her grammar, and her spelling. She was fitting in the group of smart Chinese children. Thus, she felt belonging and in line. What made the poet proud of herself and experience a sense of belonging? She was proud of her English, her grammar, and her spelling. She was fitting in the group of smart Chinese children. Thus, she felt belonging and in line. When I was growing up and went to high school, I discovered the rich white girls, a few yellow girls, the imported cotton dresses, their cashmere sweaters, their curly hair, and I thought that I too should have what these lucky girls had. When I was growing up and went to high school, I saw many rich white girls and a few yellow girls. They wore imported cotton dresses and cashmere sweaters. They had curly hair. I thought I too should have all the things that the lucky girls had. The lucky girls were the rich white girls and some yellow girls with their imported cotton dresses, their cashmere sweater, and their curly hair. Who were the lucky girls? The lucky girls were the rich white girls and some yellow girls with their imported cotton dresses, their cashmere sweaters, and their curly hair. We see how the high school girl in Nellie Wong feels when she sees the rich white girls and a few yellow girls in her school. They wore imported cotton dresses and cashmere sweaters. They had curly hair. She thought she too should have all the things that the lucky girls had. When I was growing up, I hungered for American food, American styles, coded white, and even to me, a child born of Chinese parents. Being Chinese was feeling foreign, was limiting, was un American. When I was growing up, I hungered for American food, American styles coded white, and even to me, a child born of Chinese parents and being Chinese. I was feeling foreign as I was an un American. Not eating American food and not following American styles, not having white skin, and being born of Chinese parents are regarded un American. She was eating Chinese food at home, but she hungered for American food. What was regarded as un American? Not eating American food and not following American styles, not having white skin, and being born of Chinese parents are regarded un American. What were the poet's food habits? She was eating Chinese food at home, but she hungered for American food. When I was growing up and a white man wanted to take me out, I thought I was special, an exotic gardenia, anxious to fit the stereotype of an oriental chick. Exotic means foreign, unusual, and exciting. Gardenia. Gardenia means a flower used in bridal bouquet as it is associated with purity and love. Stereotype. Standard conventional image. Typecast. Cliche. Oriental. Oriental means Asian. The term is regarded as offensive by Asians, especially by Asian Americans. Chick, a beautiful girl. Oriental chick means an Asian female, a girl with Asian proportions of beauty. When I was growing up and a white man wanted to take me out, I thought I was special, like an exotic flower, keen on accepted as an oriental beauty. She recollects the memory of being selected by a white man with happiness. She says that it made her feel special and precious. She started believing that she represents the Eastern beauty. When I was growing up, I felt ashamed of some yellow men. Their small bones, their frail bodies, their spitting on the streets, their coughing, their lying in sunless rooms, shooting themselves in the arms. When I was growing up, I felt ashamed of some yellow men, the small size, the weak bodies, the habit of spitting on the streets, the coughing, and the lying in sunless rooms and taking injections in the arms. She was ashamed of some yellow men, the small size, the weak bodies, the habit of spitting on the streets, the coughing, and the lying in sunless rooms and taking injections in the arms. Why was the poet ashamed? She was ashamed of some yellow men, the small size, the weak bodies, the habit of spitting on the streets, the coughing, and the lying in sunless rooms and taking injections in the arms. When I was growing up, people would ask if I were Filipino, Polynesian, Portuguese. They named all colors except white, the shell of my soul, but not my rough, dark skin. Are you notice the spelling of colors? In Indian English or British English, the spelling of color COLOUR. In American English, the spelling of color COLOR. When I was growing up, people would ask if I were a Filipino, Polynesian, or Portuguese. They named all colors except white. My soul was white, but not my rough dark skin. Outside her home, also she has a lot of problems. Many people think her to be a Filipino or a Mexican or a Portuguese or a Polynesian. And they ask her if she is a Filipino and so on. This makes her feel alienated, and all this happens because of her skin. When I was growing up, I felt dirty. I thought that God made white people clean, and no matter how much I bathed, I could not change. I could not shed my skin in the grey water. When I was growing up, I felt dirty. I thought God made white people clean. No matter how much I bathed, I could not change. I could not shed my skin. These lines indicates racial issues. People attitude towards the skin color. Some people believe white is pure and black is impure. We see her taking bath too many times in the hope of shedding her white skin. She thinks God created the white people clean, but she herself was dirty because of her yellow skin. She goes to the extent of loathing her because of her skin. She bathed many times to get her skin color white, but she could not shed her skin, and this made her desperate. What was the notion of cleanliness that made the poet desperate? She thought God made white people clean. Her concept of cleanliness was white. She bathed many times to get her skin color white, but she could not shed her skin, and this made her desperate. When I was growing up, I swore I would run away to purple mountains, houses by the sea with nothing over my head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people in an area called Chinatown. In an area I later learned was a ghetto, one of many hearts of Asian America. Swore means to make a solemn declaration or affirmation by some sacred being or object. Chinatown. Chinatown, an area of a city outside China where many Chinese people live and there are lots of Chinese restaurants and shops. Ghetto, slum, an area of city, especially a slum area where people of a particular race or religion live closely together and apart from other people. When I was growing up, I swore I would run away to purple mountains, to houses by the sea with nothing over my head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people in an area called Chinatown. In an area I later learned was a ghetto, one of the many hearts of Asian America. As part of her resistance, she wants to run away to Purple Mountains, to houses by the sea with nothing over her head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people. She wanted to run away to Purple Mountains, to houses by the sea with nothing over her head, with space to breathe, uncongested with the yellow people. Where did the girl wish to escape to in her childhood fantasies? She wanted to run away to Purple Mountains, to houses by the sea with nothing over her head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people. I know, now that once I longed to be white. How many more ways, you ask? Haven't I told you enough? I know, now that once I long to be white. You may ask how many more ways will I choose for that? But haven't I told you enough? When I was growing up is a poem of resistance. In the concluding lines, a self realization is affected as she discovers her ethnic identity. She reconciles with her Chinese American identity, thereby breaking away from the stereotypes of Western beauty cult. What is the transition suggested in the concluding lines of the poem? In the concluding lines, a self realization is affected as she discovers her ethnic identity. She reconciles with her Chinese American identity, thereby breaking away from the stereotypes of Western beauty cult. When I was growing up is the most frequently repeated line in the poem. It is repeated 11 times. The poem represents the plight of all women immigrants in America. It talks about the writer's past and her journey from childhood to adolescence. With each passing stanza, there is a progression of time, attitude, and outlook. She recollects the memory of being selected by a white man with happiness. She says that it made her feel special and precious. She started believing that she represents the Eastern beauty. She accepts her ethnic identity and breaks the American stereotype of beauty. She yearned to run to her homeland, where she can breathe freely and be her own self. Go through the main points once again. Chinese American is Nellie Wong's nationality. Unbound Feet is a writing collective of Chinese American women founded by Nellie Wong. Songs of Farewell written by Nellie Wong, which is permanently installed in a public place in San Francisco. Women and Revolution Alive and Inseparable, the lecture series which made by Wong popular. When women rise, everyone will rise, the statement by Wong. When I Was Growing Up is an autobiographical poem. When I was growing up is the frequently repeated line in the poem. It is repeated 11 times. Find out the answers to these questions. What was the discrimination practiced among the siblings that made the poet feel crushed between high walls? What is the image of the desirable woman that is seen in the poem? Who were the lucky girls? What was regarded as un-American? Why was the poet ashamed? What is the transition suggested in the concluding lines of the poem? Discuss the evolution of identity in the poem. What are the images of racial stereotyping in the poem? Analyze the image of the desirable woman popularized by the dominant white culture. Identify the images of self-loathing in the poem. What are the techniques used by the poet to explore the growth of the girl? I think all of you get an idea about the poem. When I was growing up and Nellie Wong. Go through the textbook and make notes. Never stop doing your best just because someone doesn't give you credit. You can expect a first module exam soon. It's time to stop. Keep safe and healthy. Thanks for watching me. Have a good day.